So what we wanted to do is recognize it's been a year. So with both PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles hitting their first birthday, we thought we'd take the chance to look back at how the first year has gone for the ninth generation of consoles. So we'll start with PlayStation 5, then go to Xbox Series X and S, and then finally quickly go through PS5 versus Xbox Series. So with PS5, we all own a PS5. We've got these PS5s as various stages. Mike, you got it almost like day one from memory.
I think it was pretty much day one. Yep.
And I think I got it midway through, and then Swinny got it recently. So maybe I'll open and then I'll throw to you, Mike, and then finish with Swinny. Like for me, I just think this console, although like I still don't like the look of it. I just think it was very well executed and realized. I think, there's no real major flaws that I have with it. Love the dual sense, think it's awesome. It's quite heavy for me. I've got small hands. But parking that, like everything about it, the interface, it just feels extremely polished. And honestly, just like a, console manufacturer that is just firing on all cylinders. And I think the key thing is, you go through the lineage of Sony, PS1, almost, only releasing it because they were so annoyed with Nintendo, like massive surprise hit. PS2, most dominant console of all time. And then almost like the arrogance from PS2 to PS3, where it was overpriced. It was, too costly for them, over-spec'd almost the way they built it. Then PS4 was the redemption. And it's good to see with PS5 that they haven't gone down, the natural path of arrogance. They've actually invested and, pulled together something that I think, is going to put them in a great position. And it's really hard for me to see, and we'll cover it a little bit later, but, how Xbox is going to compare long term. But great console. And then, like, finally for me, it's just, I just still honestly don't think you need one. Like, I think, like, a year on, I look at it and I'm like, I don't regret getting it, but I just think I did not need to get a PlayStation 5. Like, there's nothing compelling on the console that warrants getting a PlayStation 5. But yeah,
If you
go on.
didn't
I'll go to
have
you first,
as
Mike.
many consoles, would the argument be different? So, say for example, you didn't have options. All you had was a PS4. Would you recommend it as an upgrade in that sense?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like, no doubt. And I think if you had the base PS4, it's worth it. I think if you have a PS4 Pro. And one thing I did do, I was thinking about this and I'm like, I'm going to look at like PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, like all these different consoles' first years and compare it that way. And I must admit, like most of them were a bit like, unless you have an amazing launch game, it's not super common for, almost like a, must have game coming out about a year later. The one exception to me was Halo 3, which I think is still one of the best games of all time. And that came out about a year after the 360 came out. I think the 360 was one of the best consoles from the year mark. Like that's a high watermark though. I don't think PS5 gets anywhere close, but again, I think it's an amazing console though. And the fact that you can play all the PS4 games and everything like that's really cool. But yeah, did you have anything to add, Mike? And then we'll go to
Yeah,
Swinny.
absolutely. So yes, I did get it. I think pretty much at launch. So I was, privileged to be able to get my hands on it that early on. Physical size, it's too big. It's a weird clunky shape, but that doesn't really matter. You put it in your cabinet and you forget about it, and it's quite enough. It's all good. The DualShock, as you said, fantastic piece
Dual
of equipment.
sense.
DualSense, sorry, DualShock, DualSense. I'm getting tired. It's nearly 11 o'clock. Is a fantastic piece of hardware. It actually did, holding it in your hands finally felt different. Something was definitely different about it. Something was improved. Something was really cool, and I love the attention of detail to it. I think I sent you guys a few macro shots that I took, sort of zooming out, but I reversed it. That there's like 35,000 little symbols in instead of the little dots or something. So you grip it better. The surface actually has tiny little the four Sony symbols for the PlayStation, which I think is an amazing little attention to detail. Have you seen that, Sony?
No, but remember, if you zoom in on the Xbox controller, it's Phil Spencer's head.
Oh, that's right. We did talk about that. That's
Do you know
right.
what I was
It
going to
was.
say, Swinny? I was going to say,
What?
did you know that Super Mario Brothers 2 was actually a different game?
Shut up.
Yeah, go on.
So look, so hardware wise, fantastic, amazing what it can do as well from a performance perspective. I got Demon's Souls remake when it first came out, and it was an amazing game, perfect game to play on something like that because it reminded me so much of the earlier PlayStation days that I had with the PlayStation 3 where it originally came out. So it was a perfect game for me to be able to do that. And one other thing that I think Sony have done fantastically is having that catalog of PS4 games that are not running at 60 FPS in a lot of cases, stuff like God of War, which a lot of people played, but I actually never really got around to playing them properly. And they're really good AAA titles, stuff like God of War. And when you consider the fact that the console itself is $750, you can barely buy from a computer game perspective a 1660 Super at the moment for $750. Yet with this, you get a full 60 4K capable 60 FPS console that also comes with a catalog of free games that are actually really good games out of the
Doesn't come with
box.
it if you don't have PlayStation Plus.
Well,
just
okay,
putting it
sorry,
out
you're right.
Yeah, no, it's not.
You're
This is
right.
like
I
how
didn't,
people say
I
free
didn't think
game
about
on
that.
Game
No,
Pass.
you're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right about that. Yes, but still, overall, in terms of the value of the package from a gaming perspective, I think is fantastic. What they've done with that, and it was a really cool move from Sony to be able to offer those games as well. So I don't play it as much as I should, but it's purely because I've again privileged to have a choice of different consoles that I can play across. I'm hoping they're going to keep releasing a lot of really cool first party games, a lot of really cool exclusives, because I think in the previous generation, we'll do comparisons, Sony was definitely the winner in my opinion. So I really hope they'll just churn out more really cool first party games. Yeah. What about you, Swinny? How are you feeling with yours?
Well, it's good. We've kind of had different talking points, so that's good. The PS5 is the console that everyone wants. It's interesting when you do like a buzz check, unlike other workplaces, people talk about video games at my work and no one ever talks about Xbox.
Yeah.
It's always, PlayStation 5, or, I can't get a PlayStation 5. Like, everyone defaults to PlayStation 5 as well. So when you're
I noticed
hearing
that,
like
yeah.
podcasts and stuff, people like, I think it's also on Xbox, and that just goes to show you, like, everyone is so focused on the PS5, and there's a good reason for that, but it just goes to show how ingrained Sony now is. And if there were no shortages, like the sales are already awesome. Just imagine if there were no shortages, like the sales would be crazy.
Oh, through the roof, yeah.
Obviously, like it's games. The strong point as well. You mentioned Demon Souls, but even just like Returnal, Deathloop, which is obviously Microsoft published, but hey, it's a Sony exclusive. And Astro is just awesome. You get that with the bloody console. Like, what a way to show off the console. And as you mentioned, just a whole bunch of really good upgraded games, like even like Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate. Ghost of Tsushima is apparently amazing on PS5. So
Yeah, it
it's
was really,
And just
it was
on that
really
as
cool.
well, Swinny, like these games, you're right, they're not for free in the PS Plus collection, but you can legitimately Australian dollars buy God of War easily for like $10. And that game is, one of, like, for a lot of people, the best game of that generation. So, the value that you get if you can get your hands on one of these things. And to your point, like, Australia is a tiny little country, 25 million people. There's a Twitter handle that like just publishes when it's available in Australia, right? And that has 75,000 followers. Like, that is freaking insane when you think about it,
Wow.
that people have gone to that length to sign up to that, you know what I mean? To try to get their hands on it. So
cool. But yeah, that's me. Like, there's a lot more to say, but I think like that's where we get into comparisons, which we'll do at the end.
So I don't have an Xbox Series X or S. I said from the start of that generation, I'm more of a PC gamer from that space. And, I'm trying Game Pass for 3 years, given the deal that I got. I'm not super happy with it so far, but I think there are a lot of cool games coming out in the next year or two. So I think, it could redeem itself very easily and quickly. So that's kind of how I game on Xbox, but I don't think that's fair to kind of comment on the Series X or S. Maybe I'll go to you, Mike, and then close out with Swinny, and then we'll get into comparison quickly.
But I've probably been playing my Series X more than I have my PlayStation. which is weird because I've got the option to play a lot of those games on PC, but I find just sitting on the couch, not dragging the PC over there, makes more sense. To your point, if you have a PC that's capable of doing this, the Xbox is kind of a moot point, I think. It's almost like why would you bother with it, really, when you can do it on PC for the same thing. So it's a really weird spot where it sits in the market in that sense. Because with Sony, there's a lot more exclusives. With the Xbox, I struggle to almost justify why the hell I even purchased it in the first place. But I do enjoy the fact that you have it there, you turn it on. I love to be able to just jump straight into a game, swap between games. Um, I've really enjoyed playing a bunch of stuff on it. So for example, Forza Horizon, I've been playing that on the Xbox as opposed to playing it on the PC. Um, so I've been, really happy with mine. There's nothing that I can complain about it because it's been a solid device for me at the moment. It's done everything I've, wanted it to do in that sense. Um, yeah, I wish there were a few more really cool exclusive games on the platform that are, and I get why they're never going to be exclusive just for that. They're always going to be on PC as well. That's not a bad thing. I think that's a really, really good thing. But I wish between the two platforms there were just more cool exclusive titles that I could look forward to um, on that. Because otherwise, yeah, it's hard to justify it for me. Yourself, Swinny, as the aficionado, the number one
With the
Xbox.
Xbox symbol above your
With
head.
the Xbox
Yeah,
symbol
the
right above
Xbox
your
symbol
head.
above my head. I, for anyone that randomly checks this clip out and doesn't know the context of where we all stand, it's obviously like I lean into that, but I feel I am very neutral in a lot of regards. In saying that, obviously the Series X is the console that I wanted the most. It's the main platform for me. I obviously love my achievements, so it'll take a lot to drive me away from that platform as being my primary platform. Um, but like it's Xbox has been making a lot of great decisions, but kind of like there's no buzz about the Series X majority of the time. Um, but I feel that they are positioning themselves in a. I don't think they'll get ahead of Sony, but I think they're positioning themselves really nicely so that when that future lineup starts hitting, that then I think we'll see them start taking strides. But there's just I'll get into the games in a second, but because that's obviously the huge missing point of Xbox. My favorite feature of this whole generation is actually smart delivery. It has been so seamless and so awesome because I do actually jump between my Xbox One X still and my Series X, and just
Same
having
here.
games that it just works, and that's what you sometimes want. You just want something that works, and it's great to know that automatically all the saves come across. Like I think they've set themselves up with an awesome platform. Now they just need bloody games to put on it, Like we're not talking obviously it has a lot of games to play, but when we're talking about why you would buy an Xbox, especially an Xbox Series X if you've already got a One X, there's not like even Forza Horizon 5 runs pretty good on a One X, you know? It's pretty much just Forza Horizon 5 at the moment that you'd say like is like a tentpole, which obviously Halo got delayed, but man, like there's almost like nothing else. Like it's just such a shame that obviously Game Pass is the huge thing, but Game Pass is its own beast, right? And again, like you don't need a Series X to take advantage of Game Pass because most of the games on there aren't going to be. You don't need a Series X to play either. But a lot of the games that got Series X enhanced updates, like Gears 5 and Forza Horizon 4, do make use of the technology really well. So I think that is great. But again, it's like, they're old games. They're not new games that you're buying an Xbox for. The backwards compatibility is really appreciated. The fact that I can still play all my old digital 360 titles, any of the digital Xbox One, original Xbox games, like it carries it all across, which is really appreciated because I think we kind of almost take that for granted now. But like 2 generations ago, the idea is like the idea of, hey, I've got access to all my old games on old platforms just wasn't a thing. So, but I guess the final thing on Series X is quite telling. So I actually had a colleague ask me. They say, "Hey, I've got myself a Series X. I'm picking it up today. What game should I buy for it?" And I had no answer.
Oh no.
And
Horizon.
I'm like, because the thing is, right, obviously, like, like Valhalla to me is still my favorite next gen game, but that's obviously not a next gen only game. And I didn't have an answer. So, do you like racing games? Forza Horizon 4 runs really nicely on a Series X. Like, this was a while back before Forza Horizon 5. I'm like, do you like Gears of War? Because that also, like, they're old games. Like,
Call of
it
Duty.
sucks. Yeah, it sucks when, like, imagine someone asking you that for Nintendo 64 when it came out. Mario 64, Wave Race.
Or PlayStation.
Switch.
Anyway.
Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I know. Look, like, I mean, it kind of lends well into the comparison, Swinny.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think, like, this is how I'll frame it. I think from a feature set, how things are structured, the Series X almost in every category is better than the PlayStation 5 from my perspective. Like, as you said, and I was going to jump in, but I didn't want to interrupt, the smart delivery, it's like laughable. Like, smart delivery is genuinely smart delivery. And it's almost like the PlayStation 5 got dumb delivery. Like, you didn't really go on the journey, Swinny, but like right at the start, if you installed, say, Final Fantasy VII, which has now a PS5 version and a PS4 version, it is extremely, like at the start of the console launch, it was extremely hard to even know, am I playing the PS4 version of the game or the PS5 version of the game? And there were people who played halfway through a game and realized, oh shit, I've been playing the PS4 version of this game and I didn't know. And then the way that the saves work, you couldn't transfer the saves. So you're like, some people were like, oh my God, I've spent like 100 hours in this game and I can't transfer it to a PS5 and I've got a PS5. Like, this is fucking ridiculous, right? And even to this day, there's stupidity where you have to download your PS4 version because it doesn't transfer across. PS4 version of the game, get the cloud save, and then upload it to like whatever server it will be. Then you can enjoy the PS5 version by downloading it and then transfer the saves. I believe, and I'll probably get corrected on this, but I believe that's how it works with Ghost of Tsushima, which is like a first party game. It's insane, right? Like, to me, it's just unbelievable that is like the way that they've structured it. I think on the backwards compatibility thing, I don't agree with what you're saying that it's an assumption. I think you're saying that as an Xbox person, where they've done an amazing job at like bringing in the back catalog, including Xbox One games, where it's like with Nintendo, you definitely don't assume that it's going to
Nintendo's its own beast. Like, let's not.
And then with PlayStation, I mean, the conjecture was like, what are they going to do? Are they possibly going to, release the PlayStation 5 and you can't play PlayStation 4 games? Maybe. And then people were like, oh, maybe we'll play all the way to PlayStation 1. So, no one even really knew at all. And, as it launched, there were games that didn't work. Very, very few, obviously. But it was quite interesting and telling that games weren't running exactly right on it. But
on that note, because like I didn't get a PS3 and I still want to pick one up.
Yeah.
Eventually, I was kind of like, and I knew it wasn't the case, but I was disappointed when I spent ages in the PlayStation Store and PlayStation 5 being like, oh man, I wish they had digital versions of some of those games that I never played on PS3. Just just like put the old Tales games up there that I do on PS3 only. So
yeah, and that was just structurally, like, they just picked the wrong architecture. And it's still costing them to this day. It cost them like $200-$300 per unit when they were selling it back then, which is unbelievable. But I mean, getting to, I guess, ultimately the most important thing is the games. And you're right. Like, the thing is, to me, there is no killer game on the Xbox Series X that warrants you picking one up. And then if you have a PC, which so many people do, I feel like almost all the games you could just play on the PC anyway. And multi-plat, to me, always seem better on the Series X, or it's like marginal. You can barely tell the difference, but that's not a compelling enough reason for me to go, oh, I'm going to get a Series X instead of a PlayStation, when then I lose all the potential first parties and the Miles Morales, or I almost said Moranis, Demon Souls, all these kind of games, which aren't like compelling reasons to get a PS5, but they do, like, there's still factors that, for me, as far as I can see, the Series X doesn't have. Now, I think they got so hurt by Halo Infinite not being ready for launch.
Mm.
Like, I think the whole conversation's different. If
Mhm.
I'm very confident that Halo Infinite is going to be the best Halo since Halo 3. And I'm very also confident, actually. I think it'll be like up to that Halo 2, Halo 3 level. Not probably quite there, but like at that ballpark. And I think if they had that when it launched, man, it would have been really interesting conversation. It would have been really interesting. But we don't live in that reality, right? And I don't think there's any buzz really about the Series X because of Halo. I think people are now amped about Halo, but it's not like Halo then leading to, Series X, let's hype this up. It's kind of broken that chain for me. And how about
Sweet.
you, Mike?
Myself. So first of all, the thing I'll say, and we talked about this before, is I think the Xbox has a shit name. Series X. Huh? What? When you go to the shop and when the average consumer goes there, they'll go, "Oh, I've got a PS4 at home. Oh, there's a PS5. Oh, PS5. That's better, right? Because it's a higher number. I'll buy the PS5. So there's
People
an
aren't
upgrade
as
for
quite
it."
as dumb as the way you're saying it, but I
Well,
get
no,
what
I'm
you're
just
saying.
saying,
I get what you're
I'm
saying. I get what you're saying.
oversimplifying it, but it makes so much more sense. You go from 4 to bloody 5. It's a better thing. It's newer. It's upgraded. Does more shit. Perfect. When it comes to Series X, what the fuck does Series even mean? When someone goes to the shop, they're gonna go, "Oh, Xbox One X, Xbox Series X. Which one's even better? Is an S because it starts
Yeah, we
with an
get it. We
S
get it.
better?" Anyway, I'm like, it's just dumb. I think it's really dumb, and I think it's the same thing that you were saying, Swinny, and maybe it's just a general population thing. I don't know. No one's ever gone, "Oh, I'm getting an Xbox or something. What do you think of the Xbox?" Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I want to get a PS5. Oh, do you have a PS5? Do you want to sell me your PS5?" It's weird, and I think marketing is a lot to do with it, and I think the name probably has a lot to do with that as well. That I think they just didn't get the name right, and that makes a huge difference to stuff like this. Whereas Sony kept it simple. Hey man, we've got a new version of our PlayStation that's better and more powerful. We've just added another number to it. You want it? Great, I'll buy it. So, I mean, there's other factors involved, obviously, like everything we talked about, including the games, but that makes a huge difference, and I think Microsoft just screwed that one up personally.
Yeah, like, on that though, to be honest though, it does actually confuse me a little bit. I go into JB Hi-Fi and I look at the shelves and they'll have like a split and it says Xbox Series and Xbox One. And then on the friggin' actual physical, like games, some will say Xbox One, some will say Xbox and just as Xbox. And then some will say Xbox Series S and /X, I think it is from memory. And then Xbox One on it as well. And it's like, it's a total mix of everything. And honestly, even as an informed consumer, I look at it, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I would be a bit nervous. I'm going to buy the wrong version because
Absolutely,
supposedly there are like multiple SKUs for the exact same game where you can buy a version and it's like, oh, no, don't worry. We'll fix it in the back end with the smart delivery stuff. But I still kind of want the right version. And I'm like,
Same.
I
Yeah.
don't like this. I feel like if I got, someone in my life to buy a game for me, I'm like, far out. I know they're going to buy the wrong one. And I want a specific one. You know what I mean?
They would. You can even imagine a kid going, "Hey, mom, I want an Xbox for Christmas." She goes there. How do you, unless you have to talk to someone, right? The average consumer
Yeah.
has no idea, just looking at the box, that this is better than that. They both do 4K. I think they both probably say 4K on the box. This one looks just skinnier than that one. I'm like, what's what? I have no idea. Unless you're in the know, you have no idea. And I think it's a bad move from Microsoft. It's confusing.
I think to that though, that's a lot easier because all they always ask is, do you want to be able to play physical stuff or not? So
Yeah, but then you have but then you have Xbox One, you've got Series S, Series X. But what I'm saying is if a kid goes, "I want an Xbox for Christmas," and their parent goes there and they go, "Okay, you've got the Xbox One X and you've got the Xbox Series X. This one's a bit cheaper, but is it actually better, worse?" Seems like a better deal because it's cheaper.
anyway,
It's confusing
Yeah.
for the average person, I reckon.
but look, I think ultimately though, it's not all lost. I do think because they're trying to do totally different things, and it's been like that for a long time in the background, with Microsoft going, okay, we're just going to win, subscriptions over anything else. I do think if you could roll it forward like 4 years from now, that there might be just a huge suite of games that are exclusively on Game Pass,
Mhm.
that the Starfields, like all these games, and people
Mm.
are like, this is amazing, this is like a must play game. And this is where I think about the 360 era, when there was games coming out on that, like Mass Effect was a 360 game in
Mhm.
my mind. Like people look back and they look at Metacritic or whatever and they go, oh, PS3, Xbox 360. Nah, it was a 360 game, man. And Gears of War and all these kind of games, I do think 4 years from now is a more interesting conversation where, this suite of games on Game Pass that are still going to be for, including that subscription. And then parents, their kids might go, oh, I want to get on this. And then it's a better to get a Series S or a Series X Pro or whatever they're going to call it. I think that's when they'll actually build a lot of momentum in sales of hardware. And I
Mm.
think that's really what they all care about. Not They almost don't care about these consoles, in my opinion. And I think
I
that's why
agree.
they look really bland, in my view. Like, as offensive as the PS5 is, I almost prefer it because it's trying to do something. Whereas the Series X is so like not generic, but it's just like it's not bold in my view at all. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, it's kind of a
I
bit
do
dialed
prefer
in.
it though, to be honest. Physically, I actually prefer the
Okay,
shape.
I don't have
It
it,
fits
so
in everything so much better. Yeah, it's
yeah.
it's nice. I love the monolithic 2001: A Space Odyssey styling. It's funny you mentioned and sorry, when you actually want to cut to you as well to get a lot of your thoughts on this. I had a PlayStation 1, then I had a PlayStation 2, and I thought, naturally, I thought I would transition to PlayStation 3, etc. But Mass Effect, I think, is one of the Mass Effect and Oblivion, because I got both nearly at the same time. That's what drew me to Xbox. That's what made me do the Switch. It was the fact that it was so I put some weight to the fact that a game can sell a console. It
Mm.
absolutely can, which is why when you mentioned that the lack of Halo, I think probably cut their sales a bit. Because to me, absolutely, you get a good game, people will go there and buy a console just because of that game. What about you, Swinny?
Look, the I talked about that pipeline, the titles. That is where, like, the Bethesda games, like, we've already seen, obviously, stuff jumping into Game Pass, but, like, that is where they're basically investing for the future.
Hmm.
But they're not investing for the future of consoles, as Intergot was saying, they're investing for the future of Game Pass. But when it comes to we're talking comparing consoles here, not Game Pass and PS5. PlayStation is clearly the dominant platform. I don't think anybody would argue it has the games, it has the buzz, and it now has the install base, just like it had in the PS4 and the PS2. Xbox has positioned themselves as almost like the player's friend,
Mm.
and I think that is going to keep them in the race, even if maybe they don't care that it's a race or not, but obviously they want to sell consoles. But when it comes to the first year, in comparing them, the PS5 is the console.
Mm. All right, I think that was well said, Swinny.
Great.
All
Very well
right,
said.
we'll wrap up for this week.